name is Jennie Ramsey, and I would like to share with you my entry for the 2023 Cherrywood Fabric Challenge. This year's theme was called Monarchs, and my piece is called Hello Spring. The fabric bundle comes with 6 colors in black and white. You'll see there's 3 gorgeous greens, a gold, an orange, and a red. There's 2 new techniques that I'm excited about that I used in this piece, and the first one is that color wash grid that sits behind the Monarch, and then the other one is the edging, and it is little pieces of white that have been appliqued to a piece of black strip and then used as the binding. And I feel like it really turned out much more effective than I had hoped and sets off the Monarch well.
To start, I chose the photograph that my Uncle Mike took and gave me permission to use. Then I drew a 20-inch by 20-inch square so I could make a pattern for the piece. I projected the Monarch onto my tagboard square, enlarging it so I could trace it out. Back upstairs on my dining room table, I colored the Monarch in. I wanted to do a green color wash grid as the background for the Monarch. In order to get the various shades of green, I used bleach and then a product called Bleach Stop, which, you may have guessed, stops the bleach. I cut the quarters of green into smaller rectangles so I could try different bleach applications. Spray bottle, bleach pen, and soaking in a bleach solution. Then rinse and soak in Bleach Stop. Here's a special technique to wring the fabric out. Step, 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 step. And then hang the pieces up to dry. Here are my shades of green. Then I cut them into 1 1/4 inch squares. I traced a grid out so I could keep my columns and rows straight, and then laid a featherweight interfacing over it. Gluing the squares onto the interfacing base made for sticky fingers, and it took a couple of days. Once I was pleased with the gradation of greens, it was time to sew. I ran a 1/4 inch seam vertically down, joining each column to its neighbor. After all the columns were joined, I trimmed a scant 1/16 off so I would be able to iron the seams open. Then it was time to sew the rows together, trim the 1/16 off, and iron open again, which is fussy work, but well worth it because the piece lays flat when you're done. On to the Monarch applique. This is a water-soluble stabilizer that I used to transfer the Monarch image onto the black fabric. I used embroidery floss for the tiny dots on the wings that were too small to applique. The stabilizer melts and rinses off with water, and you may recognize my wringing out technique. Step, 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 step. I added the color pieces to the wings by cutting the shapes out of Steam a Seam Light 2 and fusing them to the Monarch. I also put the fusible web on the back of the butterfly so I would be able to attach it to the green background. Now that the Monarch applique was done, I moved on to the borders. I auditioned several different styles: ombre lines, red lines, multicolor lines, and whatever this is. Ugh. I settled on a random sprinkle of geometric flowers. With the border design complete, I made the quilt sandwich: back, batting, and top. Finally, it was time to place and bond the Monarch. And then, head back into my sewing room. Yay! First, I ran a tight black zigzag stitch around the outside of the butterfly. Then I changed my thread and quilted straight lines on the colors of the wings and the flowers. Once the colors were laid down, I went back and added some of the black details, like body texture, the proboscis, and the antennae. For the background, I started with an echo line around our friend, Mr. Monarch, to make him stand out more. Then I stippled across the green field, hoping to make the greens blend even further. I did a scattering of pebbles along the border. I could have filled the whole thing in, but I like where the dense pebbles meet and scatter across the more open places. And there's the quilted quilt! I squared it up to 20 inches by 20 inches. Now to start the zebra stripe binding. I fused Steam a Seam Light 2 to the back of a rectangle of white, then cut out a bunch of white strips. Peel the paper backing off and lay them out on a strip of black. See, it's super fun and not tedious at all. Back to the iron to bond all the little white stripes down. Then I sewed a tiny white straight stitch up and down each one. By attaching a plain black strip, I was hoping to reduce bulk when I had to actually fold it in half for the single fold binding. Next, I sewed the binding on, then pressed it out. It was a little more stiff than a traditional binding, but it was still workable. I pulled the binding to the back and slip stitched it down. Here's the back and the front. Close-up of the zebra stripe binding and of the Monarch itself. I'm pleased with how my piece called Hello Spring turned out. The due date is June 15th and finalists will be announced in July. And to close, here's a picture of my grandson. He's gotten us both glasses so we can read our book together. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.